Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to day 6 of my Wholist trainings on metabolism. We've got you covered on metabolism basics on Tuesday, which you need to really get to dig into the rest of the week. So go back to if you haven't watched it. We talked about reframing, what obstacles you see for lifestyle and behavior change, and what does failure really mean. We talked about things that slow you down with your metabolism and things that speed it up. Did you expect those yesterday? And today we're going to cover metabolic changes in aging in men and in women, and then stick around and I'll remind you briefly about the killer steal of an offer to work with me that I told you about yesterday just for watching these trainings, and an announcement just for you physicians and practitioners that are watching today. I've got a goodie for you. With that, I'm Heather Hammerstedt. I am on year 20 as a physician and year 20 as an integrative nutrition coach. Through certifying in lifestyle medicine in 2017, I founded Wholist. It's a whole body specialist, you get it, with the goal of really finally providing science-backed information around food, movement, mindfulness, and sleep to really get people inspired to understand how their bodies and their brains are working and use that to internally spark sustainable lifestyle change. For those of you who are new to Wholist and or new to me, I hope this week was a good introduction of what that looks like. Today we're going to dig in. It is Saturday and the family is home, and I have apparently been booted out of the house. So hopefully the weather holds and we can finish this live here together. So if you are here, please give me a like or a love. Let me know that you're here. Drop some hellos in the comments. The algorithms only show other people things that other people have engaged with. So really, please help your community out by showing them valuable, real information that they can change their life with. So aging, it happens. As I watch my oldest start junior high, my husband hit 50, my parents aging, and changes happening to myself, like time really does keep going. You can't ignore it because it's just going to keep happening. So let's talk generally about what happens to males and females during aging in terms of metabolism, and then briefly, sorry boys, about men-specific changes, and then more in depth about perimenopause and menopause, because to be honest, it's a lot more complicated, as we all know. So general aging. As men and women reach middle age, significant changes in metabolism occur driven by factors such as hormonal shifts, loss of muscle mass, and changes in physical activity. So here's a detailed, nerdy breakdown of how metabolism changes with age regardless of gender. So men and women will both have a decreased metabolic rate with aging, meaning that your body needs less energy to maintain its basic cellular functions at rest. So your BMR decreases by about 1 to 2% per decade after the age of 20, and this decline is more pronounced after the age of 40, particularly due to a reduction in lean muscle mass or lean body mass, which by that I basically mean muscle. And by the times individuals reach their 50s and 60s, the decline can significantly impact calorie requirements. So you can think about this: if your basal resting metabolic rate, how much energy you are required and are spending to run your basic cellular processes, if that accounts for 60 to 75% of your total expenditure, you can imagine if this is decreasing, the amount of intake you would need to match it, that is less. So if you take in more than that, that energy is going to be stored in adipose tissue or fat. So remember, we talked about most of this on Tuesday, so if you're feeling a little bit lost, maybe go back and kind of dig into that and then watch this again. Additionally, all men and women will undergo pretty significant hormonal changes with aging, particularly in like middle age. So thankfully, I think this is becoming more of like a vocal public conversation and more people are aware, but geez, I sure had never heard of like low T or perimenopause 10 or 15 years ago. I think that's great, and the more we all know, the more it normalizes these changes because it happens to everyone, and it puts pressure on scientists and doctors to really come up with ways to help us. So estrogen, progesterone in women. In women, the most significant metabolic change comes with perimenopause and menopause. Estrogen and progesterone levels drop, leading to an increase in visceral fat, that's the fat around your organs, and a decrease in lean muscle mass. I'm still talking with my hands, even though you can't see me down here, in case you're wondering what's happening. Estrogen plays a very key role in glucose metabolism, so the breakdown of carbohydrates into glucose, and then what the glucose does and goes, as well leading from that from fat distribution, because that glucose is the primarily thing that is shoved into our adipose tissue for storage. So its decline leads to a reduced metabolic rate and increased insulin resistance. So I'll talk in depth about this later. We're going to talk briefly about testosterone in men. So in men, testosterone levels decline more gradually than women's estrogen and progesterone drop, but that starts around age 30 or 40. Testosterone is really crucial for maintaining muscle mass, and its decline contributes to muscle loss, which in medicine we call sarcopenia, and a slower metabolism. So men can lose up to 8% of muscle mass per decade after 40, so that really adds up if you're not doing anything focused to try to change that. All men and women have a loss of this muscle mass. That's sarcopenia, which honestly is, I have a B here, is a very fun word to say, even if it means like not a great thing. Sarcopenia. So muscle is more metabolically active than fat tissue. We talked about this yesterday. Muscle burns approximately 6 to 10 calories per pound per day compared to fat's 2 to 3 calories per pound per day. So you can imagine that this loss of muscle mass in men and women really reduces the overall basic metabolic rate because of how much expenditure less that you're doing just to maintain. So sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle and strength typically starts around 40, accelerates in the 50s. This muscle loss does lead to some decreased physical activity because your stamina changes, some hormonal changes, nutritional deficiencies, and by 70 that muscle mass declines as much as 15% per decade. So you really see it in elderly men. And second to last, all men and women are going to be prone to changes in fat distribution, and this is because of the hormone changes and the metabolic shifts, but it's also a vicious cycle with one leading to the other. So aging is associated with an increase of that visceral fat, which unfortunately is the one that leads to metabolic disease, and a decrease in the subcutaneous fat, which is the stuff right under the skin. So visceral fat is more metabolically active, but also more harmful. And the reason why it leads to more metabolic diseases is because it really leads to increased inflammation and insulin resistant. This shift can really exacerbate this metabolic slowdown, contributes to those cardiovascular diseases, and impairs metabolic flexibility, which is what we talked about yesterday, the ability of your body to decide whether it wants to use carbohydrates or fat for energy. And that's really what you want, right? You want to be able to use the energy as you take it in, but also if you need more of it to be able to go into your fat, break that down and take that out for energy. That last common finding in ages in both sexes is that insulin resistance or being less insulin sensitive. Basically, this means it is harder for the body to regulate blood sugar levels. This change is probably more pronounced in women after menopause and can really lead to that increased fat storage, particularly around the belly, and a slower metabolism. So all this combined, the reduced insulin sensitivity, increased visceral fat, slower metabolism, really raises the risk of that metabolic system syndrome, which is a cluster of conditions that is what I see in the middle of the night in the emergency department, which is complications from high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. So that's kind of both genders together. Let's talk briefly for our men. What is specific to men in the aging metabolism conundrum? The first is a decreased libido. So testosterone in both men and women, but especially in men, is critical hormone for sexual function. So influences libido, erectile function, overall satisfaction. So if you have lower levels, you can imagine a reduced sex drive, contributing to erectile dysfunction, and that really impacts quality of life and quality of relationships. Particularly when combined with other aging health-related issues like vascular disease. We already talked about the increased visceral fat and the decreased lean muscle. Testosterone lowering really significantly contributes to that. Testosterone also really influences insulin sensitivity. So those lower levels, you have poor blood sugar control and an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. And then again, the cardiovascular risk. I do think this one's a little bit more complex, and I won't get into all of that here, but while low testosterone does show an increase of cardiovascular disease, particularly heart attacks and strokes, it's not entirely clear in the data or to me whether that low testosterone is the cause or if it's in like an association because the low testosterone caused kind of the cholesterol insulin problem. So, chicken or egg kind of thing. Like I just said, we do see that testosterone does definitely lower testosterone does definitely cause an unfavorable lipid profile, so that higher bad cholesterol LDL, lower HDL good cholesterol, so that is probably the basis of that cardiovascular atherosclerosis and those complications. Cognitive-wise, there's two things that I think are really interesting for us to recognize in our partners, if we have male partners or family members that we love, or ourselves if we're men. Testosterone has a neuroprotective property very similar to what estrogen does in females. It helps with memory, attention, and spatial abilities. So the low testosterone levels in aging men are associated with an increased risk of cognitive decline, neurodegenerative diseases, and executive function, as well as being linked to mood disorders, which include depression and irritability. So overall, again, this cognitive health, overall well-being, really something that we do see very real with lower testosterone in aging men. So we're seeing widespread effects on sexual health, metabolism, cardiovascular disease, cognitive function, and really I think addressing these changes with the lifestyle interventions that we've talked about already this week, particularly yesterday's metabolic boosting lecture, and as well as monitoring overall health, and then a conversation with someone perhaps about hormone replacement therapy. I am certainly not a men's health expert, and I have plenty of colleagues who are. My particular opinion is that I think it offers several potential benefits, especially in cases where testosterone levels are clinically low, so laboratory data plus your symptoms. And I think they could probably impact multiple aspects of the health that we talked about. So if you or someone you love is having these signs or symptoms, I don't think it hurts to ask for testing those testosterone levels and seeking out a seasoned, reputable physician who can interpret those tests appropriately and recommend if TRT is helpful. It does also carry some risks, and again, so I think should be monitored by a well-trained physician. A lot of these hormone replacement therapies, which we'll talk about estrogen later, you can get them online from God knows who. I do highly recommend you do your research and make sure you're getting someone who has lots of experience and is a physician. So let's get into the meat of it with some women's topics here. So in women, testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen are key hormones. We talked about this before, again, with general aging, and with men, these all do influence fat storage, appetite, and cravings. So these hormones fluctuate throughout a woman's life, particularly during perimenopause and menopause, which really affects body composition and eating behavior. I'm going to say this several times, but the reason why I'm talking about all this at length is I want you all to understand that this is entirely normal. Like, our bodies do this because nobody lived as long as we used to live, and as soon as you were done having babies, your body was like, we don't need all of these hormones anymore. But we didn't have the opportunity to live like 50 more years or like 60 more years, 70 more years after you had your kid and have all these metabolic problems. And that has been a short period of time in terms of the evolution of a human and our complex underlying physiological and hormonal development. And so it's normal. This is all normal. It happens to everyone. We need to understand why it's happening, that it's normal, talk about it, find the things that you can do and the help that you might need to feel better. So here's a quick view of the teachings I have done about premenopausal hormones and exercise cravings. Let me turn this around. Share screen. That's not the one. We'll get to that later. Okay. That is my Instagram. People cannot see that. Let me make it a little smaller and see if that helps. A little bit. Let me try again. I'm making it like miniature. The Instagram window is so small. Okay, that's about as good as you're gonna get, Instas. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so you can see that the natural cycle of estrogen and progesterone in particular are metabolically suited for certain types of behaviors and symptoms. So what you're seeing here is, when you're This is like so tiny for me to see. You can see that when your progesterone, this red line, is low, that you are going to be probably a good faster. You're going to have good mood. As it starts coming up, you're going to start seeing some changes here in terms of your ability to fat burn and burn muscle. The testosterone you can see raise a little bit right here in the middle. It's the estrogen that's a super big change, and this is what we're going to see on the next slide. You can see really when this peaks, you're seeing that improved mood. You're seeing the ability to fat burn coming. You're seeing some fasting ideal. All of that is something that you see with the estrogen that kind of pops up there. And those are the things, as we will get to, about some of the symptoms that you may be having as you're blunting that ability to raise that estrogen by the change in your age and where you are in terms of perimenopause. So here is a quick view, this one, of what your hormones do over time while hitting perimenopause and menopause. I'm going to come back to one that's similar to this at the end that might show this a little bit more concretely. But basically you can see what your hormones do over time while hitting that perimenopause and menopause. You can see that it just drastically drops here. Sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing it. Okay, you can see this estrogen, the orange line there. See how it starts coming down right around in your late mid-30s, and then you see it like zigzag like bananas right around there. That's perimenopause. That's when your body's like, what is happening? And then menopause is kind of that kind of slower, flatter over there. Progesterone, less bananas in the middle, but still pretty significant decrease down. You can see your testosterone coming down, and interesting, your melatonin, which probably really explains some of the sleep issues we have. So, let me get back on camera. Okay, here I am. Okay, so here's a brief rundown of what each of those hormones does and what happens when it does this fall down. Okay, so estrogen, we saw it fall, and then go down. Estrogen plays a significant role in fat distribution. So higher levels of estrogen, typical before perimenopause, favors the fat storage in the hips and the thighs subcutaneously under the skin, which is less harmful than visceral fat, whether you like it or not, just in terms of metabolics, less harmful. So as estrogen levels decline, the fat tends to accumulate more in the abdomen. Again, that visceral fat associated with more metabolic disease, insulin resistance, cravings, and appetite. Estrogen influences the regulation of appetite and food intake, because how it does that is by affecting the brain's sensitivity to that satiety hormone, that leptin that we talked about earlier in the week. So that's the hormone that tells your brain that you're full. So if your estrogen levels drop, then your brain doesn't recognize the leptin that you have, meaning your leptin sensitivity decreases, and your brain doesn't know you should be full. Does that sound familiar? So leading to increased hunger, cravings. Those cravings are particularly for high fat and high sugar foods. And that's just not fair, right? So the cholesterol levels. Estrogen positively influences cholesterol metabolism, so it makes that good HDL, lipoprotein. It decreases the low LDL, bad cholesterol. This effect contributes to a lower risk of atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease in premenopausal women. However, during menopause and menopause, the estrogen levels, remember, like that, and the LDL bad levels increase even with no change in your diet, raising cardiovascular risk. One of the things I like to teach in Wholist is that cholesterol is not necessarily always what you eat, it's what your body is doing to create the cholesterol inside of you, that honestly you don't really have that much control over most of the time. I was honestly shocked by my perimenopause workup lately. My LDL is creeping up. Despite a very quite clean food intake and a healthy exercise pattern and a normal BMI. My functional gynecologist is sure it's the estrogen decline, and that was really eye-opening to me, really, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this all week. Cardiovascular disease. Estrogen has a protective effect on the cardiovascular system by promoting vasodilation, so widening of the blood vessels. That happens through the production of nitric oxide and really reduces the risk of hypertension and cardiovascular disease. The decline during perimenopause is associated with an increased risk of heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events, really like making us much more equal with men in terms of that presentation, again, to me in the emergency department in the middle of the night. We're going to talk about two more things. We're going to talk about inflammation and cognitive decline before we move on to progesterone, and I'm hoping that this bee eventually leaves me alone. Estrogen has anti-inflammatory processes, which we love. We love anti-inflammatory processes. So really reduces the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are like a cascade of inflammatory markers which really mitigate chronic inflammation, which has to do with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and autoimmune disorders. So you're going to see a lot of women presenting with their first autoimmune issues during perimenopause and menopause, and this is really due to that reduction in estrogen. And that, I mean, inflammation is, I think, the inflammation and the gut microbiome are like the next steps of what we are all going to like have our minds blown over the next 10 to 15 years of really understanding. Estrogen also plays a crucial role in maintaining cognitive functions. We talked about this with men and testosterone. It supports the growth and survival of your neurons, which are the cells in your brain, by enhancing their like flexibility and plasticity. And they reduce the amyloid. Estrogen helps you reduce amyloid plaque formation that's associated with Alzheimer's disease. So the decline in estrogen during menopause is linked to an increased risk of cognitive decline and dementia. This is a lot, right? But we can imagine, right? That's why I showed you the graph ahead of time. Like this goes down, all of these risks are going up. And so this is normal. This is what happens to our bodies. This is what our bodies are doing in a natural process. The question is, what can we do to improve our longevity and decrease our risk from those things in terms of our lifestyle management and perhaps other associated opportunities, which I'll talk about later. Progesterone. So progesterone levels fluctuate during the menstrual cycle. We saw that decline with menopause. When you have high progesterone, you have that water retention and bloating that you remember from those premenstrual feelings. Conversely, low levels contribute to mood swings and cravings, again, for those comfort foods. Progesterone also is involved in fat storage, not quite as much as estrogen is, but particularly in the lower body. And so the distribution of fat is sort of changing from that again from subcutaneous right under the skin to that visceral around the organ fat storage, which we want to avoid. Estrogen is definitely the heavier mover when it comes to metabolic support when normal, and metabolic dis-ease when lower, and that's in cholesterol, cardiovascular disease, and inflammation. Progesterone is sort of like her JV sub and like her little helper, right? It helps support all the above work of the estrogen, but not so much on its own. It may have a slightly bigger role in cognitive brain health, as it does appear to protect neurons as well as estrogen does and promotes new neuron health. But when people are talking about hormone replacement, they're primarily talking about estradiol or estrogen and not progesterone. There's lots of reasons for that. I'm not an OB-GYN. But there are some studies showing that the addition of progesterone does have increased risks, but we'll talk about some of that later. So testosterone. Did you know that all women have varying levels of testosterone? I think we should have learned this from the last couple of years when you've had all these like sports controversies of women who have varying levels of testosterone, because that's what we all do. I'm listening to this really fantastic podcast right now on Embedded called Testing. I think it's like 6 or 7 episodes, and it's really interesting about women in sports over the years and all of the kind of gender verification which has been going on and continues to go on. So anyway, we all have testosterone. Some of us have higher and some lower, although our levels are certainly lower than men. But testosterone, again, crucial for maintaining muscle mass and influencing fat distribution. Testosterone isn't directly linked to cravings, but it can cause reduced energy and physical activity. And really the balance between estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Oh, I should say testosterone, obviously, for women, also involved in sexual satisfaction, and sexual libido. So that is a conversation on a whole nother level. But this balance of these three, regulating fat storage, appetite, cravings, decline in these are going to increase cravings, a shift of fat distribution, metabolic health, cholesterol, cardiovascular, inflammation, cognitive disease. This is really going to help us adopt strategies that we're going to talk about next, in terms of, this bee is like hunting me, to really mitigate those effects. So what can we do? I think you're all going to know what I say because we covered a lot of this yesterday in the metabolic booster section on food and exercise, but some adjustment of the exercise routines and food choices is going to be even more essential to maintain health and manage these changes effectively. So during perimenopause, a combination of strength training, cardiovascular exercise, flexibility, and balance training is really key to maintaining muscle mass, bone density, and overall health. So let's dig into them. Strength. I already went into strength training yesterday and why it's essential for efficient and flexible metabolism at any age. But in perimenopause and menopausal women, it's essential to combat not just the visceral fat, but also the prevention of metabolic and cardiovascular disease, bone health, joint health, and balance. 2 to 3 weeks of resistance training is key at any age, even in the elderly. And of course, this looks different at different ages for different women, but I just keep RBG in mind when I think about all those videos of her like lifting weights in the gym when she was like in the Supreme Court. It's amazing. So we can all do it. In perimenopause, many women notice a significant, sudden, distinct change in what used to work for me is not working anymore. So at this age, the answer is less zone 2 endurance cardio. We talked about that yesterday, and more resistance training. And I mean heavy, like you do 5 reps and you're nearly to like, I cannot lift this anymore. You might need a trainer to help you get started with that doing safely and help incorporate that into your life. And as you age, maintaining that muscle might start to look later and slower, but with help you can adjust this as needed. So strength training 2 to 3 times a week, essential to fight off the effects of low estrogen causing decreased muscle mass, increased fat mass, decreased metabolism, all that stuff. Remember, we talked about that muscle utilizing 2 to 5 times more calories per day in each pound than fat. So it definitely adds up. If you carry 140 pounds of fat and only 40 pounds of muscle versus 100 pounds of fat and 70 pounds of muscle, that's a really big difference. So improved insulin sensitivity, increased bone mineral density, decreased cardiovascular disease, decreased hypertension, decreased risk of anxiety and depression, reduced cancer mortality, and reduced all-cause mortality. So really important. If this sounds scary to give it a try, you should still try. It's incredibly supportive for those in their 40s and beyond. HIIT, so high intensity interval training. I already went into why overtraining cardio yesterday is a problem. When we hit perimenopause, this also becomes more apparent. The like run, or elliptical until you see the calories calculated on the machine, like spit out a number that makes you feel good. It doesn't work anymore when it comes to your fat percentages and where your fat is stored. And that sucks, right? Well, the answer in perimenopause at least may be less moderate endurance exercise and more HIIT, high intensity interval training, like basically pushing your heart rate and your work output high for a small period of time and then recover and let your heart rate come down and then do it again. This doesn't have to be running. It can be done on various machines or in various modalities. Maybe a helper like a trainer is beneficial at first, but I saw a meta-analysis not that long ago. 38 studies combined together, looked at the results, sees HIIT training in perimenopausal and postmenopausal women, suggests that the HIIT training supports fat loss in normal and overweight women with more benefits in perimenopause than postmenopause. So normal weight, overweight, perimenopause, HIIT and strength training is where it's at. Additionally, it helped overweight women lose visceral fat, which is what we like. After menopause, HIIT was found to be more effective than running, but not quite as effective as perimenopausal. So when you find yourself hitting that proverbial perimenopause wall, it's important to realize you're not doing anything wrong. Everything we talked about today and this week, your body is amazingly complicated. It's doing all the things it's supposed to do at certain times in your life with the knowledge of what's happening and why your body and brain are doing it. It can take that knowledge power and apply it to modify lifestyle behavior and switch it up and trust the process. So We're going to talk about food and nutrition, and that's our last thing. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about hormones. So, protein intake. Increased protein intake really supports muscle preservation, which is vital to muscle loss acceleration prevention that happens during perimenopause. So 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal, lean sources, beans, legumes, fish, chicken. It also helps with satiety, which basically means it makes you feel full longer, which is super helpful with appetite and cravings. Healthy fats, omega-3s, fish, flaxseed, walnuts. That's general hormone production support and reduction of inflammation, which again is low. The inflammation is high during low estrogen progesterone states. These fats are heart healthy too, which is also helpful, and they stabilize blood sugars as well. Fiber and whole grains, vegetables, fruit, whole grains. So I hate the word carbohydrate. I wish there was a separate thing for complex, healthy carbs and simple processed sugars or natural sugars that are simple. They break down entirely differently, and I could talk for ages about it, but your complex, they look like this, and your simple ones look like this, and of course it's going to be much harder for your body to break up this. It spends more energy. We like that. So complex carbs, totally different than simple carbs. Don't avoid the complex carbs. Veggies, fruits, whole grains, they support digestive health, maintain blood sugar levels, reduce cholesterol, make you feel full, reduce your overall calorie intake. All those things are good. Calcium and vitamin D support your bone density. That's dairy, leafy greens, fortified foods. Vitamin D is sunlight, fatty fish, supplements, all important. As we dug into yesterday, whole foods, grown or born, are unprocessed and less inflammatory with clean macronutrients of these complex carbs, proteins, and healthy fats that use more energy to break it down, are more facile for their use in boosting metabolism and being used effectively, and have more micronutrients to be easily used by the gut and brain for better absorption and function. Never is this more important than in the perimenopausal and menopausal ages. So I'm going to talk briefly about two more things: fasting and perimenopause and estradiol replacement. These could be talks for each on days, and we don't have that. I've already talked for too long, but I know that these questions are going to come up. I'm a proponent of intermittent fasting if done thoughtfully. I talked a little bit about this the other day, but the benefit of fasting periods is allowing for metabolic flexibility and efficiency, so your body learning to break down its stored energy from adipose tissue and liver for use, and learning to make its own energy from the building blocks that are macronutrients left in your body for you. I'll say it again, though, that if you understand the body's metabolic engine and thermostat, and if you're feeding and fueling it enough in your eating window, you're not going to drop your resting metabolic rate down, even if fasting for long periods. So keeping those eating windows varied can help the engine and the thermostat keep on their toes and still burning energy efficiency. But if you're just using the fasting fad as a new way to not eat and calorie restrict, you are going to decrease your BMR and just get poor nutrition and slower metabolism. Now, something does change in perimenopause with fasting utility. There was a study that came out in 2023 that everyone was all social mediaing all about increased cardiovascular risk in women who fasted in perimenopause state. It wasn't a study, it was a research poster. The research behind it was not retrospective and it was not robust, so the jury is out. I can say from my anecdotal experience that I do think that estrogen going down may be confounding and causing the increased cardiovascular risk, not just necessarily the fasting. I can also say that I think we have higher cortisol rates, and fasting could cause a increased stress response on our bodies when it thinks it doesn't have enough fuel if you're not doing the intermittent fasting right and feeding it enough the rest of the time, which could be amplified in a perimenopausal state. So I do think that there's some kind of anecdotal science stuff that makes me think that that could be the case, as well as with our Wholist clients. I do see that premenopause and postmenopausal fasting, when done thoughtfully and well, seems to be more effective at weight management than in the perimenopausal state. So my conjecture is this second graph. My computer is getting dangerously low on juice. Okay. Share screen. This one. I think I briefly showed you this one. So it's not, you can't see the whole thing, but you can see here. You're your body does not, for a lack of a better term, know what the heck is going on in the zigzag part, right? We know that what estrogen does when it's robust and when it's low, but all those premenopausal symptoms that Instas may not be able to see it because it's off the screen, but you're going up, down, all those postmenopausal symptoms, up, down. That's a lot of stress on your body and mind. Again, your cortisol is always already going to be higher. We know about the metabolic effects of this. If we're not doing IF in a thoughtful, planned out way, then like what our physiological processes are always like trying to find a new normal, and if we're not at a steady state in everything else that's happening, then it is going to cause some more increased stress. So I'm coming to the conclusion myself that when someone is clearly menopausal, that less concentration on fasting, more attention on 3 whole food, nutrient-dense, unprocessed food meals without snacks in between, and more attention on strength training HIIT, probably better, giving your body a steady state while it gets through all the schizo of all of this zigzag, if that makes sense. Okay, lots of questions about hormone replacement. I'm not a specialist in this. Estradiol replacement therapy can have significant benefits, especially in managing the symptoms and health risks that we've talked about: osteoporosis, metabolic, cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, cortisol, glucose, insulin, cognitive function, vaginal health. Giving it back some of its estrogen and estradiol stabilizes that schizo-zagzag up and down from the prior chart. Testosterone therapy in perimenopausal women also can be beneficial in managing symptoms of those declining levels, which can accompany all of this. It plays a crucial health role in our health concerning libido, sexual satisfaction, energy loss, all of that. I really think that you need to find the right question, find the symptoms that you have, which symptoms that question might answer, and find the right physician with the right training and discuss those risks and benefits with you. With telemedicine being so available, this is like highly specialized physicians may be able to be found. So I'm glad we got through that. I'm very passionate about food, movement, mindfulness, and obviously super nerdy about how our bodies work, especially to see it in real time in my own body. I'm pleased to be able to share that with you. If you made it this far, you're in luck. I have 2 special offers for you if my computer doesn't die. If you're looking to improve your metabolism, lose weight, get stronger, I have something special for September 2nd. I'm personally leading a coaching group through our evidence-backed, self-empowered weight wellness program. I'm going to be helping you align your biology, psychology, and lifestyle so that these become automatic. I strongly believe losing weight and being healthy doesn't have to be torture. I've had 1,200 plus coaching clients go through us. It's going to be a combination of live coaching with me and our weight wellness program that's delivered bite-sized pieces right to your phone. To be honest, it's a really rare opportunity because I rarely coach except for with our weight wellness alumni clients. So getting me at this price is a steal. So drop the word training into the comments or message me directly. Second offer, if you're a health practitioner or health coach, I've got something special to announce. We're expanding our clinic partnership program to allow you to easily integrate our proven weight wellness program into your practice. This is a white label option. A new subscription plan allows you to super affordably enroll your patients and clients into the digital program as part of your services. So this means if you have a patient who is contemplative or in active mode for achieving metabolic health, longevity, weight loss, or starting on weight management meds, you can enroll them into the 12-week weight wellness content course at no cost to them. They get tons of information just like this, text and email to them. You only have so much time to counsel them, so let us dial in the lifestyle behavior while you practice medicine and do all the badass stuff you already do. Access for your patients is based on a monthly fee by the clinic, so it's a win-win, and really right now we're able to white label it. Most of the material on the web portal will be branded to you, so you can bundle it with other services or offer it as a standalone. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel of the thousands of hours of work that I put into creating this high-level content. So if that sounds good, let's chat. Send me a private message or email me at heather@holisthealth.com, or just let me know in the comments that you want to set up a call with me and see if we're a good fit. For the rest of you non-physicians, tell your doctor, drop the word training in the comments if you want to join the group. Or thanks for hanging in with me the last week on this metabolic training extravaganza. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Something weird just happened. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions that I can answer for you. Let me know that you were here and you enjoyed it, and we'll do this another week coming up on another topic. Cheers!